What's up, everybody? I'm Lisa Fields, the founder and president of the Jude 3 Project, and we are doing a partnership with Access to help parents talk to Generation Z about sexuality and gender. And today we have a conversation that I'm excited about between a father and son about sexuality and gender. I have with me Stephen.
Yes, Stephen Coleman.
Yeah, thank you for being with me. And Tyree.
Tyree Coleman.
Yes, I'm excited to have you both to talk about this. This is a topic that a lot of people kind of shy away from, so I thank y'all for being willing to broach this subject with me. A lot of parents are scared to have this conversation with their teens. A lot of teens are scared to have this conversation with parents because it is so hard to weigh in this culture these conversations. So I appreciate you again for being with me today. As a parent, tell our audience just a little bit about how many kids you have, because obviously you have a lot of experience as a parent.
So me and my wife been married 10 beautiful years. We share 5 children together. So we have children that range in age all the way from almost 24 years of age down to 8 years of age. So we're kind of right in the middle with Tyree. Tyree is our 18-year-old. But yes, we've had some experiences with the older kids, and so it's helped us to kind of know some areas to avoid, some landmines to avoid, some conversations you want to have earlier than later. And so it's kind of helped us out, and we've become better parents as our children have progressed.
Yeah. And so I'm assuming y'all have had this conversation before about sexuality and gender with your kids.
Yes. So with my family, we are kind of like an open book. We have family discussions sometimes that can go hours long, and we're just sitting around the living room, sitting around the kitchen, and sometimes they're good conversations and sometimes they're tough conversations, but they're still conversations that we still need to have. And there could be some raised voices in those conversations, or it can be just a lot of questions being asked. And so we try to kind of create that environment in our home. Both me and my wife came from homes where we were raised by one parent, and sometimes that parent changed. So we wanted to change that aspect a little bit with our children. We wanted both parents to be in the home. We wanted to be able to have that openness, to be able to have those conversations. If you feel some type of way, let's talk about it as a family. Let's make sure that this family unit is tight.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. I think super important to have those conversations. So Tyree, how has it been for you having these open discussions with your family?
I say, just be honest on how you feel. I mean, ain't nothing. Don't shy away from how you feel. If you feel a certain way, or the discussion y'all talking about, you got an opinion on it, I say speak it. Don't hold it in or nothing. Yeah,
no, that's important to be able to share that in the family context, because it feels safe. When you think about the conversations right now in culture around sexuality and gender, does that scare you? How do you feel like it's evolved from when you were younger to now?
It's definitely a difference. It's definitely a difference. Even as I was thinking about this conversation that we were going to have, and I thought back to some of the things that maybe our parents went through, and then when we came along, we were facing stuff that they had never seen before, and how that made them feel. And then now we're in that same boat now where they're going through stuff. It's like, oh my goodness, we didn't even have to consider half this stuff. We just wanted to go out and have fun and play outside. But you guys are growing up with not even just on this topic of gender and sexuality, but you talk about bullying and having social media. And it used to be, if you got bullied at school, at least when I went home, there was a safe haven that I can go to. And now there is no safe haven because people can bully you on social media. So when you think about it in that aspect, our children are probably facing some of the challenges that our parents looked at us and said the same thing for. And it's not necessarily scary, but I think it gives you an opportunity as a parent to connect more with your child, because you just have to have those conversations and kind of see where your child's headspace is, how they feel about certain topics. And then once you connect with that, you can kind of maybe give your advice and kind of pour a little bit of your stuff into it. But I think it starts with hearing the children first and hearing where they're coming from, because I know, especially from our children or from their friends, we hear a lot that it's hard to talk with your parents sometimes because they don't get it. They just don't understand. They don't feel where you're coming from. So one thing we've tried to put in practice, we haven't been perfect with this, but we've tried to put in practice of hearing them out first and then having that conversation. So at least you know you were heard, and then we can talk. So.
Yeah, no, that's good. When you think about it, Tyree, in school and around your friends, how do the conversations around gender and sexuality happen in school? Are they happening as frequently as maybe culture may make it seem like it's happening? Does it come up regularly, or?
Like during school, it don't come up at all because a lot of times at school, if you present yourself like that or something, it comes off as you a target, or you're gonna get bullied, or people gonna make fun of you. So a lot of people don't present in school. Then some people, some people goes away like, oh, they don't care. So some people do present it, but you rarely see that. But a lot of people just like hide it and don't talk about it that much.
Yeah, and I think too, it's different in our culture, in our community, is in the African American context. When we think about sexuality and gender, it's still kind of a taboo thing. So, like you said, bullying will come, and so people kind of hide certain aspects, especially if you go to a majority Black school. Then you're not dealing with it as much as if you're in a more maybe majority culture, white or more diverse school. Do you think in the Black community, what are the greatest challenges, especially from a man, having the conversations around sexuality and gender, or even how our culture deals with that differently than maybe a different culture?
I would say, I think it's good for our culture, because once you have that conversation, once you just dive in and begin the conversation, however you start that conversation, even if it's just easing into it, it takes away, and I'm trying to think about how I want to say it, but it's almost like now we've had this conversation and your child doesn't feel, I don't know about this, or I'm listening to my friends about this, or I actually have some facts. I have somebody that I can go and talk to, because now I feel comfortable enough that if I do have further questions, if something comes up at school, if there's some stuff I don't understand, I can come back to you, versus not having that conversation at all, and them not having that safe place to be able to come to. So I think in our culture, it's better to start that conversation earlier. I haven't thought about it, to be honest with you, in the context of other cultures and how they're having that conversation, if they're having that conversation with their children kind of earlier. I haven't thought about it in that aspect, but I do think that it's an opportunity for our culture to be able to connect with, especially our young men at an earlier age, and remove some of the opportunities for kind of tickling ears a little bit. So.
When you think about like barbershop talk around sexuality and gender, how do you think in general Black men think about sexuality and gender in our culture? If we were sitting at a barbershop, obviously I wouldn't be there, but how do you think Black men generally think about it?
Don't bring that around here. It's you're a manly man. You know, you're a man. You support your family, and I'm just thinking my experiences in barbershop. You know, there is not that talk, and if it is that talk, it's usually, man, you heard about Chris and them from around the corner, man. I don't know what's going on with them, man. But I'm just letting y'all know that's Chris and them over there. You know, it's kind of that talk. But it's not kind of these talks and understanding and where people coming from. And it's not those talks. But I think in our culture, it's kind of like the military. I don't know if when I was in the military, it was don't ask, don't tell. And so it's kind of like that. Like you keep that to yourself, whatever you do in your bedroom or whatever. I don't need to know that. So in our culture and other cultures, it may be different. It's more accepted. It's more talked about. It's even at a younger age. I mean, our children go to like mixed schools with different races and different stuff like that. And you see that even from some other households that they're having these conversations, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, like their friends are talking about this. And it's like, we got that in like 7th, 8th grade. You know, you guys are talking about that at school, so it's a little different. It's a little different.
No, it's super helpful. Tyree, how you and your friends do that? Is it kind of like that don't ask, don't tell kind of with your generation, or you think that more people talk about it?
I think more people talk about it to their friends, because now people go to their friends because they feel more safe. Because definitely with that subject you talk about, now if you go to your parents or something, sometimes their parents don't accept them. So they really go to like one of their close friends, or they go to an uncle or auntie. So a lot of people don't go to their parents. So when people do talk to their friends, it's like, oh, you dad? Okay, cool. And then they be like, okay, I need advice. How should I tell my mom? And then boom, you give them the advice, and then next thing you know, they call you next day, or they text you, or you see them at school, and then just be like, oh, they ain't messing with my gender, or they don't like how I'm trans or anything. So I think, yeah, it's an open book when it just comes to friends. But as a parent, I don't think people like talking to their parents about it.
Do you feel like they're scared of being shunned? They're scared of being rejected?
I think as a kid, definitely, as a kid, your biggest fear is to get rejected by your parents. So if your parents tell you like, oh, I don't like your gender, that's why a lot of kids now shy away from their parents, or they go run away, or they do something, because if you ain't accepted at home and you go to school or the outside where you're not accepted because of your gender, then it look like you're on an island by yourself.
Yeah, and they're just looking for somebody to be there and be present. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think with all when we talk about in the curriculum, LGBTQIA, and then there's some other things that are added to that, do you think it's hard to keep up in culture with how people identify?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, it used to be like maybe like 5 letters, I thought it was.
Yeah, LGBTQ.
And as it's grown, like sometimes I'll look at it and I'm like, I don't even know what the I means or the A, you know, so, and it's very hard, I guess, if you're maybe not familiar with that community, or you don't know a lot of people in that community. I think it's very hard just as the general public just to keep up with all the changes and everything that's happening with it. So.
Yeah, and because you want to be respectful.
Yes.
And like, I want to communicate with you in a way that you identify, but it's all moving so quickly. So I don't know if you're like, it's kind of a landmine. You don't know if you step on something, it's kind of like.
And so it's almost like, especially when you get close to like pronouns is a huge one. You know, I started a job one time and they said, what pronouns do you want on your signature? And I said, I've never thought about that. I mean, me, I don't know, he, and so it's certain things that are so sticky and so touchy nowadays that you don't want to be disrespectful, that you almost ask the question before you interact of, you know, how do you want to be referred to, you know, because I work with the public as well on my current job. And so you're in homes, you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with the public. And so you kind of find yourself using more general terminology, general wording, so that you don't offend anyone. And then when they use a word, then you can begin to use that word with them. So.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. How about you? Do you find that it's hard to keep up with knowing, is it moving quickly, knowing like how people identify?
Nah, because if you go on social media now, you can catch up on anything. You can go YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat. You only got to watch one video and then you caught up. But I think talking about y'all generation is hard because y'all don't know the little, you know, apps. But us young, we know all the, you know, apps and stuff that you can go find the information on.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, okay, I never heard of that before, but pull out a TikTok video and you'll be like, oh, okay, I know what we're talking about right now. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I'm sitting here like, wow, I never thought of that.
But when you think about, you talking about you work with the general public and also obviously engaging your children, you're having to deal with this in new ways and have to be sensitive to people's experiences in a way that most people don't always think about all the time. How has that changed? I know you talked about listening, but how has that kind of helped shape your perspective?
I've always wanted to be respectful, no matter any lifestyle that anybody lives. One thing that I truly believe is you have to understand the person and kind of where they're coming from, because if we're to minister to anybody, you have to be able to have a conversation with somebody to be able to minister to them. And if I can't even talk to you, if I can't understand where you're at, maybe what's happened to you in the past, if I can't connect with you, then how can I even talk with you? How can I even minister to you? How can I even just be a friend to you? You know, how can I do any of that if I just don't understand where you're coming from? And so I think that's the biggest thing, especially as everything changes and evolves, is just to understand people. Understand that we all have our struggles. We all have our battles that we face. Yours may be different than somebody else's, but somebody else is facing that same battle or facing a similar battle and going through something in their life that they just want to be heard too, and they just want people to understand them. So I think if we can start there, that's the basis of everything, and then we can just build off of that.
Yeah, no, that's good. I know, you know, when we think about your generation, my generation, people were afraid to be seen around people that were a part of the LGBTQI, because it's like, if you're associated with them, people start to think that you're
part of the crew.
So, you know, speaking candidly, especially when I think about older Black men, they not trying to hang around men that they feel like maybe part of the LGBTQIA community, because they're like, unless they like a blood brother, they want to be able to explain like why they have proximity, because they don't want to be quote unquote guilty by association. Do you think in your generation it's the same way, or most people are just like, we can all hang together?
I think girls got it more easier because really in girls you can't really tell till they, you know, pop out with somebody. But now if you a boy, young man, and you that type of gender, you either get bullied, they would beat you, anything like that. So I think a lot of dudes don't come out, but I think a lot of girls come out because it's a safer space and there's a lot of people that accept them. But guys, they don't come out, or they try to like, they do stuff so they can look like a girl so they can get accepted, but you rarely see a guy just randomly like just come out.
And that's interesting, because you would think this generation is more accepting, but there's still those stigmas that exist, and people are being bullied. And so I think we can have a biblical conviction, but also at the same time be considerate of people's experiences.
Absolutely.
And so even you saying that, you know, brings a level of, even a deeper level of compassion to my heart, because I don't know what it's like to go to school every day and be bullied. And so it really helps us to think through like how we broach these conversations, how parents talk to their kids and how kids talk to their parents, and vice versa. How would you advise a parent that's watching to be able to start this conversation with their child?
I would say the first thing is, you know your child. You know how your child responds, you know how your child reacts. And so you know the best way to kind of initiate that conversation. And sometimes it may not be taking it head on. Sometimes it could just be going to a sporting event or going to the park or whatever, and just having a conversation and letting it kind of happen organically. Some people you may have to hit it straight on and say, what do you feel about this? You know, what do your friends think about this? Or at school, let me give you a situation. At school, if this would happen, what would everybody do? And so that kind of opens up the conversation. But to a parent watching, I would just say, you know your child. And so whatever way you have to initiate that conversation, just start trying to initiate that conversation. Even if it's a failure initially, the first time you try to talk with them, it kind of goes nowhere. it's okay, let it rest, and then maybe come back a different way to try to initiate that conversation. But just start, because you have to have it. As you see, they at school, they're talking about it. They're discussing it. They have apps. I didn't even, they have apps now that kind of describe certain things, and you can watch, of course, YouTube videos and the TikToks to understand where people are coming from. And so it's being discussed. You're the only one that's not talking about it, so talk about it.
Yeah, and one thing in our curriculum, we talk about the fact that one of the things parents have to do before they enter these conversations is to evaluate their fears before they go into the conversation. Because when parents have kids, they have a lot of hopes and dreams about their child. And so if your child maybe identifies gay or trans, your hopes of them marrying and having kids, or if it's a guy who has a son that he wants to play football, if their child's not interested, that's a lot of their hopes and dreams that they have to grieve in order to have those conversations. So it is a level of fear, I think, especially for many people, about like, if my child is gay, if my child is trans, what do I lose as a parent? Do you find that probably being an obstacle for many parents? Have you ever had a fear of, it doesn't have to be, of your child being a part of the LGBTQIA community, but just hopes and dreams that you realize, okay, this is my dream. Let me not bring this into the conversation because it's going to make the conversation more difficult than it needs to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we can put a lot of pressure on our children to do the stuff that we did not do, or take advantage of the opportunities that we kind of missed out on. And we want to do everything in our power, of course, to give our children a better life than we had and start them off on a better foot than we started. But then we want them to also pick up everything that we dropped, pick up all the crumbs that we missed. And so we can put a lot of pressure on our children. The thing that I would say, for me personally, I would say it's not that I've been scared, I would say, because I never wanted my children to necessarily just follow in my footsteps, just blanket follow in my footsteps. I want them to be better than me. And so if I had that conversation, I do agree that you have to kind of deal with your own fears and kind of get yourself in the right headspace before you're able to have that conversation with your child. Because even if your child is just having general conversation, you could you could lash out and say something inappropriate, and then now you've kind of pushed them back 3 steps, you know what I mean? So I would say, yes, get kind of in the right headspace, but I would also say, no matter what it is, whether it's this conversation that we're having, whether it's something else, if you just love your children, love covers a multitude of sins. If you just love your children, even if this is a place that they may find themselves in right now, you can love them out of it. You know, if I made mistakes as a child, 19, 21, 23 years old, thinking I knew it all, and my mom is like, this boy knows nothing. And so I made mistakes, but she loved me through them. And so if you just continue to love them, you don't know where God is taking them and what God can use in their life story to be able to bless somebody else. So just continue to love them through it. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's an encouraging word to the parents that are listening.
Yes.
Tyree, when you think about teens that may be watching this, how do you want them to lean into the conversation? What do you think they should take in the conversation for it not to be so challenging and so scary?
I would say, don't be afraid to tell your story. You know, everybody got a story to tell. A lot of people now, they be afraid to tell why they did that or why is they doing that. So I just say, just come straight on, tell your story, and whoever don't accept it, just don't accept it. But you know, you told the truth. That's your story. That's what you sticking with. So for like teens now that's looking at this, that's probably trans or anything, tell your story. The people that love you is gonna stay around. People who don't, they're gonna move away. But as long as you told your story and told everything and how you feel about it, or this how you gonna present yourself from now on, then you should be good.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for teens to feel safe to tell their story and to know that, you know, sometimes the initial rejection comes from fear. And so, like, sometimes when parents initially reject or get defensive, it may be because they're scared of something. That's why, like you talked about, it's important to have those conversations and within yourself before you broach the conversation with your kids, because you're going to inadvertently push them away, and then they're going to go back, obviously, to their friend group and feel even more rejected.
A lot of times what we do is we have it with our friend group first, and we see like, all right, what y'all points of view on this, and then we be like, okay, then we go tell our parents, and then we probably get like advice or, you know, little things to like, oh, I mess up saying this. So yeah, I would say, yeah, the same thing I said, tell your story. You know, if your parents reject you or anything, it's all good. Somebody's gonna eventually accept you, and God didn't make nobody to judge you. God made you to, you know, be who you are. So just shine the best of you.
What is the feedback that people get from teachers as it relates to this subject? Is it something is a part of the curriculum, or is it mentioned in your classes at all?
So teachers, a lot of teachers, if they see that, you got some teachers that would be like, okay, you know, they accept it, but there's going to be some teachers that's going to be like, they're going to treat them bad. So I can share one experience I had. I think I was in 8th grade. A guy, he was, you know, he was trans, and, you know, he had like, you know, everything gone, and like he had his hand raised. It was in science class, and she just skipped over him. So it's a lot of times, so when you in the classroom and you that, or like you hanging around with a lot of girls, or you be like, oh, let me do the makeup too, you know, then they even don't look at you the same. They probably shy away from you. They don't even talk to you. Or when they call your name in attendance, they probably look up at you, and then they probably give you a dirty look. But there's some teachers that be like, oh, okay, and they actually had them conversations, or they sit down and be like, boom. And there's some teachers that, I seen some teachers that would like pull a student and have like, okay, is you okay? Is everything going okay? Is you getting bullied? So it's some teachers good, but it's actually some teachers that will just like treat you badly.
Is it a part of the curriculum? Do y'all have to discuss that in classes as far as how teachers are teaching now? Do they ask you for your pronouns, or?
Nah, now teaching is very different. So now they just call you by your name, and then they call you by your name. You know, they give you an assignment. You do what you do. But then, like I say, a couple of years ago was something like that where they did ask you, like, boom. It's like when you take state tests now, it's all right, is you male, female, trans, or they be like, or you just don't want to answer. So like on state tests it is like that stuff, but as far as classroom, it's just like you just address by your name.
Yeah, and I guess that's easier to wade through for teachers. If I just call you your name, then we good. Is there anything else you want to share that you think is pertinent to this conversation?
I say for all the, you know, trans and people out there, I say just tell your story and don't be afraid of rejection. If you're gonna get rejected, keep moving on. People gonna eventually, you know, hop on the board with you.
I would also say to anyone in that community, I would piggyback on what my son is saying, is don't be afraid to be you. God loves you. There is someone that loves you. Don't let the enemy play any tricks on your mind that no one cares about you, no one loves you, no one will accept you. There is someone that will, and his name is Jesus. So I would encourage you to get to know him more, to talk to him more, because he'll never leave you nor forsake you, and he's a friend that sticketh closer than any brother. And to parents, as you've heard my son talk about today, they talk to their friends a lot. So I think it would be incumbent upon us to bring the friend group into the home, friend group into the circle, know the friends that your children are hanging out with and the influence that as much as possible, because we can never know everything, but as much as possible, the influence that they are having on their daily lives.
Yeah. And final question I want to ask, how has the Bible kind of shaped your view on sexuality and gender?
Me personally, I don't really look at like stuff like that. I just look at everybody the same, no matter what you is. I'ma, respect you. I'ma accept you like you just a regular person. So I don't really look into like in the Bible it do say some stuff, and on like apps it do say some stuff. But as long as you got like respect for people, then you just look at them as a regular person. Mm-hmm. And that's how I just look at people. I look at everybody as a regular person because you never know somebody's story. So.
How about you?
Give it to me one more time.
How has the Bible shaped your view of sexuality and gender?
So I believe it to be male and female. I believe marriage to be between male and female, and it to be just that way. That's what I believe. But I also agree with my son that you have to respect everybody. And like I talked about earlier, we can have our belief, but you don't let your churchiness become judginess in someone else's life, and you don't even know their story. You've not built a relationship and a rapport with them. Let's not just be out here judging people because we don't know what they've been through. Molestation. You just have no clue what people have been through. And so my biggest thing is I do have a belief, but I also want to be accepting. I want to be Jesus-like, because if you think about when he was here on this earth, how would Jesus have dealt with people in this community? He would have went to them. He would have talked with them. He would have ate with them. He would have built rapport with them. Once again, how can you minister to somebody that you don't even know and you can't have a conversation with? So I would like to be that, in my daily walk right now, but I also have my belief, but one doesn't spill over into the other. So.
No, that's awesome. I appreciate y'all sharing and being candid. I think this is super helpful. Thank you to our partners, Salem, for helping us here at G3 Project and Access with this, helping parents have conversations with Gen Z about sexuality and gender. Until next time, grace and peace, and God bless.